Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Rocket Live. I am joined today by somebody I've been really looking forward to speaking to for a while, Beck Power. She is the founder of Power Creative Media and also the host of the Amplify Content podcast, among other things. Speaker, creator, marketer, all those things. So I'm really happy to have you on the show. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to chat with us today. Really appreciate it.
It's awesome to be here, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So I think before we get started into some of the more juicier parts of the interview today, I think it's just worth setting it up a little bit more and just filling everybody in a little bit about you, your background, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Beck. I'm from New Zealand. That's why I talk like this. And I run a business where I help entrepreneurs to create a ton of content and repurpose it, which obviously we'll go into. But I wasn't always I started off in New Zealand and I lived nomadically for like 6 or 7 years. And now I'm settled here in Toronto where I run my business from. And it's been a wild ride, a wild entrepreneurial ride. I spent a long time being broke. I spent a long time not really knowing what it was that I was supposed to be doing, or
right.
what I was meant for. But yeah, now here in Toronto running this agency and just loving it.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's great. I mean, and it's very similar, the entrepreneurial story, and it's never a straight line as to where you start and where you wind up, and everybody has similar stories. I mean, it's I think bottom line is it just it's not easy, but if you really love what you're doing and you've got a vision of what you want to do, then it's not really so much work. You of course there's challenges and there's ups and downs, but you find a way, right? You find a way to make it work.
Definitely.
Yeah. So we were talking offline before this, and a lot of the stuff I was really getting interested in was I was listening a lot to your podcast, and you touch on so many of the topics that I like to talk about on the show, because really at the end of the day, this whole show is like, I like to feature people who I think are rock stars at what they do and how they help other people to become rock stars themselves. And that's something you spend a lot of time doing. And I've had a lot of guests on recently that have all had their different way of how they've been helping people and help to transform people personally, but also professionally, and help them to take their businesses to new heights. And one of the cool things I wanted to talk a little bit about today was you had a great statement when you were talking about, especially in the personal branding side of things, where you were saying embracing your weird. I love that statement. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means, embracing your weird?
Yeah, definitely. So I've also seen it around a little bit. I love that phrase. And to me, it took me such a long time, I might be going a little bit deep here, but I, grew up in a really religious background, and everything was about kind of like control, and you have to do things a certain way. And I never really felt like I fit in there. It was just like, well, there's got to be something more to life than this. And I really, after I left home and I traveled around, and I was kind of lost. I was really just floating around the world, trying to come up with, because I had left behind my I don't know what to call it, like the structure that I had before that I was living my life by, and now I didn't have one, right? And so I'm floating around the world with no structures, just and so I had to really come up with my own and recreate kind of who I was. And so when you say embrace your weird, to me, I always think about that creating of myself. And it's happened. We all create ourselves regularly, hopefully. Some people just stay exactly where they are for their whole lives, but I always want to be recreating who I am. And I think as part of that is discovering what makes you unique and what makes you yourself. And I think really often we project things over the top of who we naturally are because we don't feel that we're enough. And I think one of those things is money, right? I have to have a certain amount of money because I'm not enough with who I am, or I have to be the funny guy, right? Because I'm not enough who I naturally am. And so I spent a long time creating all these different personas and different things, trying to be somebody. But then when I learned to embrace the real person that I am, and I'm not like, this is a life journey, right? It's not like it's binary, it's done now.
It's not something that just happens overnight, like, and that's the thing. It's a journey. Well said.
Yeah, exactly. And I think now, like, I'm certainly further down the path than I ever have been, and embracing who I really am underneath all of that. And there's always cool stuff under there. It's like there's quirks and there's weird, I really like random things like Indiana Jones and pirates and like different stuff that I'm like, well, that's a weird thing about me. I really love pirate history. But you have to talk about that stuff in your content, because that makes you stand apart from everybody. If you're just another person doing the same thing as everybody else, there's no reason for somebody to be magnetized to you. But if pirate history is a silly example, but if I'm talking about pirate history, people are like, what the hell? Like, why is she talking about that? And it's more noticeable, right? And so you just have to find those things that
absolutely.
Help you.
Yeah, I mean, and it just comes down to, everything that we talk about all the time with everybody that comes on here, which is that personal branding aspect. And, 100% the biggest reason why people don't go down the road of embracing and creating a personal brand comes from the fear of change. It comes from the fear of, not understanding like that they should do that they're afraid to put these parts out there, that it's just perceived, it's this perceived version of yourself, sort of like a false reality of what you already think people are going to think of you, or what they already think about you. Mm-hmm. And that is 1,000% like the biggest reason why a lot of people don't go forward with creating like a really strong personal brand, because they are fearful of sharing things like pirate history. Like my brand is very much, though, I wear it on my sleeve. It's like, I'm all about rock and roll, punk rock, hard rock, all that, Star Wars. Like, I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. I totally wear it on my sleeve. I embrace it. I love talking about it. And, and people know that. People who know me really well know if you want to start, going about Star Wars for hours, like I'm down anytime. I'll drop everything and start doing that. So, but it's very true about how those things can really take you to the places where you want to be. Mm-hmm. For instance, like, just because I like it, it's funny, but it is funny that the pirate history is like, there's a certain group of people that also like that. And sometimes it's those common ground things that you never think about that then become like an amazing relationship that you would never thought you had. And you go, man, I can't believe that you just started with the fact that we connected on pirate history. And now, lo and behold, sometimes that stuff becomes like your largest, like, business relationship that you have in your roster of business. And you take that stuff for granted. It's your strengths, and sometimes you don't know they're your strengths until you really start to use them, or somebody tells you, like, you got to start using this.
Mm-hmm. And can I add one more thing to that as well? I think, like,
add on as much as you want.
We could connect under pirate history or Star Wars or whatever the thing is. But I actually think as well, like, it's cool because I'm not super into Star Wars, but I freaking love that you are. You know what I mean? So when you see somebody who's so passionate about their thing, whatever it is, like, I spoke to an accountant today, and like, she's so passionate about accounting. I freaking love the conversation because it was her being like so excited about QuickBooks. Right. I was like, oh, I couldn't think of anything worse than QuickBooks, right? But she's like loving it. And so having that connection, when people get to see you in your zone of like, this is what I love and I'm jamming right now, like, that's when they'll connect with you. It doesn't even really matter that much about the topic, I think, even though people can totally bond with you on that level. But I think when you're living your truth and doing things like that are, like authentic to you. Yes. Then that's when you like kind of radiate this joy that people are automatically attracted to.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, I agree with that full on. It's actually, I have this quote. I leave it right up here, and it's something, and it's so timely because Tony Hsieh just passed away. And I am a huge admirer of his, and Delivering Happiness is a staple book, and I've given that book out so many times to so many people. But there's a great quote in that book which I love, and I feel like it's so indicative of everything we're talking about. And it goes, envision, create, and believe in your own universe, and the universe will form around you. And I find that to be so true, that in that instance, like, someone who's passionate about QuickBooks, like, you could actually create like your own universe around that, because that's information that people will want to see when they find out you're so passionate about it, and they know that now you're an authority leader, an expert in that, because you speak so well of it, and I can learn something from you. You've now just created your own universe of people that want to be around that. And that universe could consist of 10 to 15 people. Like, that's totally fine, you know, and then it'll just keep growing from there as you go. But that to me is exactly the mindset that I think people just really need to embrace.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. So, and that's why I wanted to kick the show off with talking about that, because I just love that embrace your weird, because, and that could just mean so many different things for so many people. Like, it doesn't have to be so on the extreme meter. Like, what's weird for one person is completely weird for somebody else. But it's really about embracing those qualities about yourself that you don't really think they're strengths, but they have a lot more strength than you think. So I do want to talk about too. So one of the big things that I know that you help a lot of people with, and I'm a huge believer in this as well, is the repurposing of content. Because oftentimes I'll talk to people and you'll see them get like, oh my gosh, I never thought that the blog that I wrote 3 years ago could actually be repurposed into like these 50 other different things. And like, you take it to like the level of like, this could be repurposed like over 100 times over from a lot of things I've seen you talk about and write about. So talk a bit about that and like your philosophy on it, because I think it's really important for people to understand why that is something they should be doing and how they could do it, and it's not so unattainable.
Yeah, definitely. So I think there are a lot of options when it comes to content repurposing, right? And what it does usually is blow people's minds. It's too much. It's a fire hose to the face, right? It's like, you could turn this blog post into these 57 things, and it's just overwhelming. So they don't do anything, which is what humans do, right? Overwhelmed, don't do anything.
We're inherent.
Yeah. So, you could take a blog post and turn it into a bunch of stuff. We usually work with videos and turning those into things, a whole lot of different things. But I think really the key that we found is to help people to create a system so that they just know it simplifies it when there's a system. Even though I'm not turning it into 57 types of content, I'm turning it into like 3 or 4, but it's repetitive, and it helps clients to just go, oh, okay, I know what I'm doing now. This is what's happening. It's valuable. It's gonna get me clients. It's different types of content that I would usually put out. Usually I don't put anything out or whatever, and they're doing it for me, so I don't have to think about it. And I feel like whether or not you do it yourself or someone else does it, there's a sense of relief when you have a system. And I tried to, and I have no idea how far I've gotten, but I have 42 different types of content that we can use. And that is something of, a definition for people to go, okay, this is finite. Here are the types. And I've divided them into 4 different types of content so that we can manage like how much of promo content is going out versus how much personal content is going out. You know what I mean? Right. And so turning those pieces of content that you have into something more expanded is possible, and it's much easier when you have a system.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, for myself, I know it's one of the things I've been working on. It's probably been one of my biggest challenges is, is developing the system of creating content. I've settled into a bit of a schedule on certain things. Like on Mondays, I release certain videos. On Tuesdays, I do this live show. And then usually then on Wednesday through Friday, I drip other pieces, whether it be static or graphic or maybe a quick video here and there. But I've been working on developing a better system so that way it doesn't become so hard for me. Getting it out there and creating it. And I think that's it's a real challenge, I think, for anybody. But yeah, once you create a system for it, it does become a lot easier. Question for you is for people who are watching and listening to this, because they'll listen to this as an audio podcast too. Like, I always find that the biggest challenge is a lot, they don't even know where to start, So what kind of advice or recommendation could you make to somebody who doesn't just know they just don't even know where to start with this?
Yeah, definitely. I think people try to recreate the wheel, right? First of all, they think they have to show up every day to create new content, which is crazy. I mean, I do that, but that's because I run a content business, right? If you're like accountant or something like that, you shouldn't. You could show up you could ideally show up every day, but like, if you just want to create content that's going to go out for you every day, you only really need to create one piece a month. You know, if you're creating a piece a month and it's in a format that is kind of helpful, like there are different points made in it. You don't want to talk about the same thing for 1 hour, like over and over again, but you do want to make sure, like, one thing that's been really helpful for me is creating videos with like little listicles. So 5 ways to get more Facebook views on your videos, or, 10 ways to grow your Instagram following, or just stuff like that. That's little 5 or 10 or 7 or whatever number of things. And then you can actually go through those things the list that you've made, and create little, like, either videos or posts or things on each of those topics. And before you know it, I mean, I've got a little framework where it's like 5 by 5. You do a 5-minute video, you pick 5 different content types, and then you create 5 of each of them. And then boom, that takes you 3 hours and you've done content for the whole month. So I know, like, it's maybe not a super beginner strategy, but just taking those, that one video or a post that you've done and turning it into different types of content is super valuable.
Yeah, and I think that is really good advice, though. I mean, I think that is a great way to get started. Because even and that's the other thing too, is I tell people, like, listen, if you want to start doing videos, like, don't worry, you don't have to, like, invest this enormous amount of money. Like, start working with what you have at first, is this, like, just get comfortable using this device which everybody has in their pocket, and work from there. You'll naturally want to get better. And even at that point, you're still not having to, like, go out and go buy, like, a gigantic system of things. Like, this setup I have is very basic. It's very modest. It's literally a Logitech webcam. This mic I got from Amazon like a year ago. And then I have, like, one light in front of me. And, okay, I'm leaving my computer out of it, but it's a laptop. It's not anything crazy or special. So, the barrier, the technology barrier, I should say, it should not be the reason why you're not creating content. I mean, would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. There doesn't need to be a technological barrier, because I know when I'm repurposing videos, and I'm chopping them up, and you need a video editor, and you need to figure out how to put a Canva image on top of the video, like, that, I understand how that could be a bit confronting for people who just want to do their work and they don't want to deal with this crap. But if you had a video that you made 3 or 5 points in, then you would just make either another quick video, like a 1-minute video on how, maybe one of your points is to engage on Facebook more often. Just talk about that for 1 minute. You know what I mean? That's not hard to do. You don't have to chop anything or do anything. It's just making a little sub video. And then you might make a post about it, and then a longer post about how you noticed that engaging with people on Facebook was really valuable because of whatever reason. I mean, that's a decent post. And then you make a meme about it, Yeah. Like, that's multiple pieces of content from one concept. And I think the frustration, and I believe you'll agree with me, but you can tell me, the frustration I think people have is they've got their message and they're just trying to deliver it over and over again in the same way. And that's a frustration, because it's boring, right? Everyone else is bored too. We're all bored of the same message over and over again. And I think when you can see that there's 42 different ways to say the same thing, and then you can say it on 15, like, platform type things, for example, a blog post or a live video or a tweet, or there's all these different ways to say it, and there's different formats. You could do it as a testimonial, you could do it as a short story, you could do it as a long story, you could do it. There's so many ways you can do it. Once you see that, you're like, oh, I don't need to be bored with my message anymore, because so many posts are like, oh, I've got 50% off my product, and no one buys it. And you're like, why aren't people buying it? It's because they're bored. You're selling them the same thing over and over again. You've got to give them a tutorial or a video testimonial or you've got to say it in different ways. So I think that's a real key. Yeah,
I think that is well said. I mean, that's exactly I agree with you 100% on that. I do have a question for you, because this is something I get asked, and I'm sure you get asked as well. Let's talk a little bit about, the finance side, right? The ROI side of things, because oftentimes you get like, I want to do this and I get it, but, like, honestly, like, how does this all lead to, I just want business leads. I just want leads. I just want to be crushing. I just want to be making sales. Like, why do I have to do all this stuff to get to that?
I love it.
I want to hear your answer on this, because I suspect we have probably really similar answers, but I want to hear you say it, because I think it's a very valid point, though, for a lot of people who aren't used to doing it, and they're like, listen, I just want to sell, man. I just want to be crushing it. Why do I have to do all this?
Yeah, definitely. That's such a funny question to me, because it's to me, it's the most obvious thing in the world, and it's not to other people, and I understand why it's not.
Right.
But to me, it's so obvious. If you want someone to buy from you, they have to have heard of you. That's kind of like step number one of anything, right? No one's going to buy anything if they don't know who you are. So if we work backwards from there, then okay, great. Well, now if they've heard of you before, but they don't really think about you hardly at all, then when they need your service, they might not remember that you exist, right? They might just go and Google it and then go with somebody else.
Exactly.
But it's like if your sister-in-law was a realtor and you forgot that she was a realtor and you sold your house and went out to get somebody else, she'd be pretty pissed, right?
Right.
Like, I'm a realtor. What are you doing? You've gone to well, you forgot because she didn't tell you like recently, right? It's a weird example, but like it's the same with people online. You can't be killing it in sales if you're not talking to people. Like, you have to have conversations in order to have sales. And if you're going to have conversations, where do those happen? Like, on the phone. Sure. How did you get the call on the phone? Well, the guy found me on Facebook. Oh, did he? Cool. Because you like, that's what this is. Right. So yeah, of course, if you're just creating crappy content, people are going to unsubscribe. They're not going to follow you. You're not going to get any stuff. But if you're creating quality content that actually like gets people to come to you, be magnetized to you, be interested in what you're saying, yeah, it might not be instant for everybody. It's going to be instant for 4 or 5% of the people, maybe.
Takes a lot of work.
1% or whatever. But it's not going to be instant. But these are people who, I mean, I just signed somebody up for a $3,000 thing, and I met them last year, on Facebook.
Right.
So, and we had a conversation a year ago, and then she would randomly message me occasionally during the year for whatever reason. Do you know anyone who's good with Kajabi? Do you know, random stuff. And now she just bought my thing for $3,000. Now, like, these things take time. If you do social media for 2 weeks and you're like, this isn't working, like, there's a problem. But this is what business is. And this is why I'm really passionate about this question, you probably tell. But this is what it is. It's conversations. It's showing up. It's being in people's brains when they need you, and not just like when there's Black Friday. Maybe they don't need you on Black Friday. Maybe they need you in this, third week of December. And where are you? Just reveling or being mad that you didn't make that many sales on Black Friday. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's my answer.
Listen, you answered it exactly the way I wanted you to answer that question, because it's very true, and that's how you have to think about it. It's not so much like, why am I putting so much time into just this, like, making this video or doing this tip? It's like, it's thinking about that long play on it, because it is a long play. I mean, it's not like you're gonna just put this out. Hey, and you might get a quick hit like that, and that's awesome, but it's not really about the quick hit. It's like, it's about staying top of mind and being relevant and engaging your audience, your network, your relationships. That's where the business is going to come out of. And you said the word perfectly. It's conversation. It's an ongoing conversation.
Yep, exactly.
And that's what creating content does, is it keeps that conversation going. It gives people something to talk about. It makes you top of mind. It makes you a valued member of their life.
Yeah, and like, honestly, what else are you doing with your time? You should be creating content to create conversations. Oh, I want to be selling. Cool. Like, create some more conversations, and then you can spend more time selling. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, what I just really think it's crazy when all business owners should be spending all their time creating content or hiring people to create content. Because that's what gets you in front of more people. And I feel like even if you want more referrals, right? Right. If you want more referrals, who's giving you referrals? people who are seeing your content. I get tagged in posts like almost every day, people looking for repurposing or people looking for content advice or whatever.
Right.
And people are tagging me. Guess why? Because my stuff is in their face all day.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You're top of mind.
Exactly.
And, you know, it always goes back to the old adage, you know, people do business with people they like and trust. I mean, and when you're putting content out, you are in that. You actually said it really well in one of the podcast episodes. I was listening to that you do. And you basically said that it's not always 100% the fact, but the fact that people see you talking about these things automatically makes you more memorable and gives the perception that you're an expert in what you do, and that you are not saying you're not trustworthy, you're not an expert, but because you're doing it, because you're taking the initiative to do it, it automatically mentally puts you on a higher pedestal.
It does. Exactly. Sometimes people will say to like my clients or me or whatever, like, wow, you're killing it right now. And I'm like, how do you know that? Like, how you don't know what's in my bank account or how my stuff is going, but it doesn't matter because they think that you are. Guess why? Because they see you everywhere, all over the place. And that makes them go, wow, she must be doing really, really well. And that it's a hack. Like that's like a life hack, right? Is like, if you're running a business, no one wants to buy from a loser. So you gotta, you know, I'm not saying to buy a Lambo, you know what I mean? But you do have to be showing your face and giving advice. It's not trying to prove anything. It's literally just teaching people and helping them. And that makes you a winner. It makes you look like a winner. It makes you look like you have authority. Whether or not you have like credentials or whatever thing that people don't care as much about nowadays.
Right. Yeah, very true. No, that's great. That's great. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about too is out of the platforms, right? I mean, there's basically like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter. What do you recommend to be something that somebody should maybe get more involved in or pay attention to? Like what is your advice for something like that?
I mean, the first thing is that it depends on your business because, well, obviously not when you think about like your fishing hole as a business, like where are you fishing? Well, you need to fish where the fish are, right? So if your fish are not on TikTok, don't go there, right? If they're not on Instagram, don't go there. We put our clients' content wherever their potential clients are. But I mean, the funny thing I always find, actually, this just popped into my head. I always find like people think they should be everywhere. Oh, I need a Twitter and I need a LinkedIn and I need to be on TikTok and it's overwhelming. Should I have a Twitch account? I'm like, why would you have a Twitch account? That's insane. Like, you're an accountant. You don't need. So you only need to be where your clients are. And there's potential, and this is a crazy thing to think about, right? There's potential for you to make millions of dollars just from the platform, your main platform that you're on. You don't even need to have other accounts anywhere else. Oh, you need to have them. No, you don't. Zero craps. Just stay on your one thing and do that. I could make $1 million from Facebook. I'm not trying to go all like into other platforms and things like that. I mean, I have accounts on other platforms because of the nature of my business.
Right.
But you don't need to have all these other ones. It actually detracts, I think. It pulls energy from your main thing where you could be absolutely killing it on one platform, but now you're faffing around with 6 different ones. And feeling overwhelmed and disorganized. So I think like, sure, you should have your main platform and a secondary one. But I don't even think you need to have, if you have like TikTok, and you don't really make TikToks, but you just kind of like hanging out in there. Sure, great, it's fine.
Right.
But like you don't need to create videos for TikTok just because it's a new platform that's big. Now that being said, because I do always want to get that out of the way first. You can make a ton of money just from your main platform.
Right.
But like there is value in checking out new platforms to see where, if your clients are on there or if you have something valuable to give. I know on TikTok, there are actually a lot of like random things doing really well that you wouldn't think, like accountants or like therapists or different things like that, where, so you have to go where your clients are and where they're going to be, where they're going to find you. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave that there.
No, and I think that's really sound advice. I mean, I think it is. It really makes sense. Like, you know, it doesn't mean don't like to not experiment and play with these other things, but you know, if your target client avatar is on LinkedIn and that's where they hang out, that audience hangs out, then you know that you should be creating content on LinkedIn, and that content should be aimed at that audience. But like if you have LinkedIn and Facebook, and it's, you know, it really does. It depends on your business. And I think as you start to see engagement on a few of them, I think that then starts to say, well, this is where you should be spending more of your time and energy. Rather than saying like, well, I need to be on. And that's the other thing too, is like, you do just overwhelm yourself. And when we were talking earlier before we came on about one of the things we hear from people is the time, right? The doing it yourself versus hiring someone to do it for you is the time commitment of it. And that's a big barrier for a lot of people. But honestly, if you do what you just said, where it's like, listen, don't worry about putting content on 6 different platforms, pick one. Now all of a sudden you've cut your time investment down this much, and on top of that, schedule your, like, you know, spend 30 minutes, spend 15 minutes. Can you spend 15 minutes on a platform a day and create content and engage with somebody on you know, people on that platform? Like, that to me is a solid plan based on what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think once you cut it down to, okay, I'm just going to be on LinkedIn, or I'm just going to be on whatever, like, your energy is now all into one thing. You can create a ton of awesome content for one platform, post 5 times a day if you want, which people, again, I'm going to say this again because people need to hear it. Like, if you're posting really crappy stuff 5 times a day, of course, you're going to get people who are like, ugh. If it's just, hey, it's 50% off, or hey, you could still buy this, or whatever. Like, these are such lazy posts, right? It's like, buy my shit, like, it's useless. But if you're posting like tutorials for something that's related, or telling a story about how you grew up and used to go fishing with your dad, and now, you know, teaching them some kind of moral of the story, and if you're putting like customer testimonials and giving examples of different things, like, that's the kind of stuff that people tune in for. And I don't know about you. I'm sure you do have these people. I have people that I follow who, when I get an email from them, I'm like, oh yeah, and I open it.
Oh, right? Absolutely, because the quality there is there.
Yeah, or people that I'm scrolling and I see something from, you know, one of my business owner friends who always puts out good stuff. I'm like, ooh, what does it say? I'm not going to be unsubscribing. They could post 10 times a day, and I would be like, yeah, let's more.
Very relevant.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I forget where I was going with the answer to that question, but I did want to say that first.
No, but I think it's good. And you did say something here again too that I did hear you talk about recently on the podcast is the story, right? Because at the end of the day, like, all the content, everything you put out, but having good stories to tell is a key component.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun lately with stories. Honestly, I used to always think I was bad at telling stories, and I was like, oh, you know, these people who write these crazy emails or do sales pages with all this different stuff, or their content. And I made it my mission this year. You know, one of the things I was really working on was like, how can I be a good storyteller? And it's kind of a nebulous term, right? It's like, I could tell a story, you know, like, well, why is it not the same? Well, there's little elements to it, and there's a lot of nuance, and I've been practicing, and I think that's really a key. I think it's funny, like, when we say we're not good at something, like, it's not binary. It's like, oh, I'm not super amazing at this right now, and let me just work on it a bit, and I'll get better, and I'll get better, and I'll get better. So it's not a binary thing. But I started practicing with stories, and now I email my list every single day. And when I'm not in a launch, I do a story, and I just say, like, you know, what was one I did the other day? Like, I bought a new jacket recently, and I went in to get the jacket, And I came out with like a jacket, a couple of flannels, pair of pants, some shoes. I was like, oh man, I just went in for a jacket. And I'm like, the moral of the story was, what else could your customers buy from you? Do you have like the Twix bar at the checkout type thing? Is there a bump, an upsell? Could they be upsold in an email afterwards to spend more money with you? Because a lot of times people are like, oh cool, I made the $1,000 sale, I'm done. But like, maybe they're in the spending mood, they got their wallet out. So anyway, that was the moral of that story. And I think when I do the morals of the story, I think people really like it.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I mean, being able to bring it back to a spot that then, okay, there was a payoff, right? So they listened to the story, and the payoff was you learned the moral of the story. You got something out of it, and I think that's a really great idea. When you had said that, I said, that's a great point that I wanted to discuss, because I think that it's something that a lot of people need to hear, especially when they're saying like, well, I don't know what kind of content to create, because after a while you're like, okay, talking about my services, how to do this, how to do that. But how do I start injecting a little bit more of myself in there? Mm-hmm. And that's where I think that people oftentimes overlook the power of telling that story and how that relates. Like, even if it's as simple as like, hey, you know why I like having plants in my house? It's because every day I wake up and I go and I water them and I look at them and it makes me smile and it puts me in a great mindset of when and just being able to tell things like the simple things that you experience in life that are so simple to you, but yet when you tell it and people hear it, and you're able to like just weave it back around so it does have sort of a moral or a point. I think that's what people really latch onto, and it becomes like much more memorable.
Yeah, I think starting it off in a way that gives kind of a hook, because human beings are wired for stories.
Right.
Like a lot of times when you're scrolling on Facebook, it's like, brr, whatever.
Yeah, it's
but then you see something that's like, it was 7 a.m. and, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
What was it? Like, you have to put some type of thing to get people to stop scrolling, and then lead them to working with you. And it's kind of an art, honestly, but it's been so fun to learn. And I think it's if you're going to be creating content, it's a skill you need.
Yeah, and I think that's a great takeaway. And I actually thinking about this now too, I think it'd be kind of cool to start like a sort of like a storytelling like group, like a virtual group like on Facebook or even WhatsApp, like sort of like a little mastermind group where everybody can sort of practice telling stories to each other, things like that, and get themselves going. It's kind of a little like storytelling support group could kind of be an interesting thing. So another little idea to build relationships and rapport with people.
There it is.
So I know you're busy. I don't want to keep you much longer for today. I appreciate your time. What are some key takeaways before we sign off? Because I also want you to just, push the things that you talk about. But if anybody listening to this, what's a great takeaway that you should be leaving with right now from out of this discussion? What's something they should be taking away?
Yeah, I think it's just to keep trying with your content, like, honestly, it's just about practice, and some things flop and some things go really well and it's inexplainable. And you just have to keep practicing, keep trying, and keep showing up and keep putting out content. Even if you're not showing up in person to do videos every day or whatever, like, still create things for your clients. And I think a really important point is to create it not from the point of view of like, I am selling this thing, but like, how can I always think of my content, like I write it for one avatar, one audience. And I think, how can I speak to this person? Like, what is this person? She's scrolling. She's got this problem. I know what her problem is. She wants to do social media content, but she's exhausted and doesn't want to actually deal with any of it, but knows she feels guilty that there's none going out. Like, what can I do to speak to her in her feed? And so that's a really interesting angle, rather than showing up and going, oh God, I've got to post something. Well, I want people to buy my stuff, so I'm just going to post that my stuff is available.
Right.
So I'd say that.
No, excellent. Really, really well said. I think that's a great takeaway. So before we leave, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways. The main way really is my AMP Content Academy. It's a free academy I put together with a whole bunch of tools and cool things in there for creating content. There's stuff for coming up with ideas. There's stuff for strategy. There's stuff all types of things. And it's a free membership at ampcontentacademy.com. It might need a www in front of it because I'm illiterate with like those back end technical things, and it needs it right now. And the other way is to join my Facebook group, which is called Social Content Marketing for Coaches and Entrepreneurs. Those are the two ways that you can find me. And then all of my products and stuff are inside of the Academy for purchase as well.
Excellent. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I'll make sure we have that in the show notes as well. And so with that, I want to thank you for coming on. This was great. This was exactly what I wanted to talk about. I thought this conversation was great. Hope everybody out there who's been watching and listening found this as valuable as I did. And I want to thank everybody once again who subscribes to the channel on YouTube, who watches these live, who watches the replays, and takes the time to listen to the audio version of these when they're released as a podcast. So I want to thank everybody for watching today. And always remember, be authentic, be yourself, and always remember to rock it.